This is episode number 256 of the Chillinois podcast. My name is Cole Preston, and I am your host. Hey, we're taking callers. That's not a joke. The number is 312-772-6844. You can call the Chillinois hotline, and you can call us, you can text us, you can leave a voicemail, which we can play on the show. We actually got a few voicemails, which we're going to play today. So we'll be pulling that up here in just a moment. But once again, if you'd like to give us a call, you can call us or text us at 312-772-6844. If you'd prefer, to remain anonymous because you're reporting possible corruption, fraud, criminal activity, conflicts of interest, or abuse in the legal cannabis industry in Illinois, we can honor anonymity. So once again, that number is 312-772-6844. Let's listen to our first voicemail that came in today, and we will address it after we listen to it. Let's play it. So,
hey, kind of off topic here. I just want you people to know that cannabis should be rescheduled to be Schedule 3, not Schedule 1. We've had legalization here in Illinois for quite some time, and there have been no massive deaths of it. There have been no noticeable harm to society. It is a completely holistic herb, so I think it should be rescheduled to Schedule 3. Don't know if this helps, but I would like society to get it together and reschedule it to Schedule 3. Thank you very much.
Okie dokie. And it looks like they left us another voicemail, so I'm just going to go ahead and play that. And actually, no, I'll go ahead and address that with some thoughts really quick. I think I get what you're trying to say, and maybe this is why you left me a follow-up voicemail. I think I get what you're trying to say, but ultimately I believe instead of rescheduling cannabis, we should deschedule cannabis. But maybe that's what you're about to say in this follow-up voicemail. Let's take a listen.
I think it makes more sense to decriminalize marijuana than to try to legalize it. It is the more non-invasive way to deal with this issue. Decrim would be a simple transition. The very word legalization seems to be too formal and too much red tape. I think we can better transition Illinois with safer access and better use through decriminalization and not legalization. I think it's the first step and the best step for legalization. Not that I want legalization, but decriminalization, yes.
Okay. I think we agree with each other. Let me just say that. The topic you're talking about is, it's very much or at least it's starting to feel like a semantic argument, because I don't know how to say it other than when I was told the concept of legalization, or when I became aware of the concept of legalization, I thought that meant that, yes, nobody else would continue to go to jail for it. So, yeah, I think like you just said, it's like decriminalization is more simple. It seems like legalization comes with too much red tape and the like. And I want to get back to the point of legalization and red tape. But before I do that, I want to share a promo for an episode that's out and available for streaming right now, featuring a defense attorney, and it's basically about this exact topic. So I'm going to pull this up, and
I think there had been kind of a understanding amongst people that decriminalization is like a step towards legalization. And my take on it, after having seen Illinois, which claims to be one of the most progressive states on cannabis, decriminalization is the goal beyond legalization. So what decriminalization would mean, as opposed to legalization, decriminalization would be essentially cannabis is no longer something to be dealt with through criminal law. Like, maybe you've messed up, maybe there'll be some penalties that the government will impose, but we're not going to deal with it through the criminal law.
Right.
And the criminal law being the branch of the government that can take away your liberty and can say, we're going to put you in a cage.
Yeah.
And we're going to take away your right to live out in society, or we're going to put you on probation and assign you to a government babysitter who, if you don't mind your P's and Q's, can then, ask the judge to put you in jail. So I don't know where that came from, the idea that decriminalization is like a baby step towards legalization, but I think what we've learned in Illinois is decriminalization is like the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
It's where you say like,
So you can listen to that episode right now at patreon.com/Chillinois if you'd like to see that entire episode featuring defense attorney Evan Bruno. Once again, it's episode number 253, and it's available at patreon.com/Chillinois right now. So I wanted to get back to the topic of decriminalization, red tape and legalization and that entire subject, because I've recently seen this topic kind of pop up as more of a hot button topic. And actually, not to get into specifics, because I don't really know what the entire argument is about. I know how I feel on the subject, and I'm open to learning about it. So, but just, somebody used a post of mine, shared it, and it's basically being used as it seems like a point of strife in the cannabis community. And it's the idea of, I talk a lot about decriminalizing, and I mean, we just showed this clip where we were saying decriminalization is the ultimate goal. And I think some people have misunderstood that. I think people have misunderstood that as me saying that I see no value in regulation, and that's not true. I see some value in regulation. I think a lot of it, truthfully, is it could improve, let's just say. If we're talking about QA testing and everything else, I mean, just things we've reported on this show show that basically testing standards aren't all they're cracked up to be. And if you're not sure what I'm alluding to, we've got an episode. I'll find that episode in just a moment. I believe it's episode like 187, featuring investigators from the Chicago Sun-Times who found that products that were on the shelves, for all intents and purposes, basically what they did was they purchased the products, took them to the lab, took those products to a testing lab, tested those products, and matched the results against the label. And what they found in some cases was that the results didn't match the label. And they also found, in fact, that some of the products failed testing for standards that normally would, prevent a product from getting onto the shelves. It's episode number 182 of our podcast. It's called What's in Illinois Legal Weed? Sometimes Contaminants. I worked with Chicago Sun-Times reporters Stephanie Zimmerman and Tom Schuba to do that investigation and talk about it. So, just going to back up and say that, like, I'm not like refuting that there can be a legal market or that there should be a legal market. And I don't think I've ever like kind of taken a hard stance, nor do I plan to, that there shouldn't be a legal market. I have always questioned the priorities in which we're approaching this, right? So when we legalized cannabis in the state of Illinois, it was under the idea that we're acknowledging that this war on drugs has affected communities and disproportionately impacted certain communities, and that it was bad and all these things. So we're going to stop doing those things and we're going to legalize cannabis. Like, that was kind of the general goal idea that they pitched. And my particular criticism of that entire thing, and basically we've seen it happen in most states, if I'm not mistaken, is that you don't see people stop going to prison for cannabis. Maybe you see less people go to prison for cannabis over simple possession. Sure, I'll give you that. Possession of small amounts. But like, why are we drawing an arbitrary line on who should and shouldn't go to jail based on the amount of cannabis that they have? It's just weird to me, because I thought it's like you're making cannabis legal because I thought we agreed it was safer than basically most substances that are legally available anyway. So like, what are we doing here, drawing these arbitrary lines? That's always been my criticism of it. Honestly, I've not done a lot of thought going into this. I kind of just brought this up off the top of my head. What I wanted to talk about today was the idea that I'm totally drawing a blank. Oh, so okay. So what I wanted to make clear with regard to that topic, sorry, I'm high, guys. I am not saying that we can't or shouldn't do both. I had to look at my notes here, because if you couldn't tell, I'm high as fuck and just grasping at straws. So I'm not saying we can't or shouldn't do both. And by both, I mean decriminalize cannabis, remove all criminal penalties for cannabis, and we can also do licensing. I'm not saying we can't do both of those things at the same time. My contention is that we must recognize and remind ourselves of the primary goal of the original cannabis legalization movement, and that was, I thought, to put an end to the war on drugs and remove criminal penalties for cannabis possession, use, and cultivation. And unfortunately, that goal has not been met in Illinois. And people ask me why, and I could give you my speculation. The reason, I think, for this lack of progress is that lobbying dollars are often viewed as investments, and those who lobby for cannabis may be driven by profits, or what some people call greed. Policies such as Homegrow and the removal of criminal penalties do not offer the same measurable returns on investment as other policies that benefit cannabis companies. In fact, most cannabis companies are intimidated by Homegrow or by home cultivators. And as a result, I think it's going to be challenging to make progress on this issue. Now, I've tried to pitch this in a different way, because again, I acknowledge that these companies view home cultivation as the enemy. That's kind of how they view home cultivation. And I pitched an idea that's already been met with criticism, and I think rightfully so. But the idea is that, like, if cannabis companies are serious about talent acquisition and development, then they should consider advocating for home grow rights and creating opportunities for aspiring growers to showcase their skills. I think it'd be a win-win situation for all involved. I don't think the cannabis companies need to look at home grow as the enemy of what they're trying to do. I think they could actually benefit by pushing for these penalties, not only because they could possibly win over support by people like myself who really value the end of this, what we know as the war on drugs as it pertains to cannabis, but frankly all drugs. That's kind of where I stand, but we're talking about cannabis right now. So I thought that if cannabis is legal, then we agreed people shouldn't go to jail for it anymore, and that includes cultivating it. So I'm trying to spin this in a direction that they can digest. Homegrow can serve as a training ground for future cannabis professionals with the right guidance, support, and, ability, frankly, because that's what's kind of getting in the way of it right now, right? Passionate and curious growers could become the next generation of cannabis industry leaders. By supporting measures which criminalize home grow, cannabis companies are missing out on the chance to identify individuals with a passion for the plant who may have already acquired valuable skills and knowledge. And I think that's a really positive way of spinning it and trying to convince a company like that to support Homegrow. And I have to just immediately acknowledge the criticism, or I guess the feedback that I've received, which is, and it's not like I'm not aware of this, like these companies don't give a fuck, right? This is basically the number one thing I've been told when I posted basically what I just said online on a variety of social media platforms. And that was one of the number one responses I received, is that these companies don't give a fuck. Look, you're preaching to the choir on that one. I totally, yeah, they don't give a fuck. I'm trying to tell them why they should give a fuck. Not only because it could benefit them like in their business, but you want to talk about brand loyalty? I'm just saying, you could get some brand loyalty off of taking a hard stance against the criminalization of cannabis. Like, and you could call other companies out for not. And you could even acknowledge that maybe you haven't had the perfect track record in the past, because that's most of the companies. Most of the companies have lobbied against Homegrow. And some companies have since made weightless statements on social media that they support medical Homegrow, which is a weird distinction. It shouldn't be. Basically, when they say they support medical Homegrow, they're saying they support limitations on Homegrow. And as you know, if you've listened to this show for any extended period of time, limitations on anything with regard to cannabis equals criminal penalties. If you have a limit on the amount you can possess, what happens when you exceed that limit? Criminal penalties. If you have a limit on the number of plants you can grow and you exceed that number, what happens? And this is true in the state of Illinois, criminal penalties, even if you have a medical card. If you exceed 5 plants, you're talking felony territory. So yeah, it's real. It's still, the war on drugs is alive and well, and it's something that, if you've not listened to our show, it's something that we've talked about ad nauseum. If you're looking for like a deep dive on the history of cannabis and you like some of these thoughts we're talking about right now, check out episode number 232 of our show. It breaks down the entire history of cannabis in Illinois, including citations and so much more. Before I go today, I wanted to share a little bit of information that I had on social media. But before I move on, if you have any thoughts about anything I just said, just a reminder, you can call us at 312-772-6844. Once again, if you're rolling a joint right now and you're like reaching for pen and paper because you still use pen and paper, it's 312-772-6844. Go to your rotary phone and dial it up. So I recently shared on social media. I'm going to share my screen for the folks that are watching. And if you're not watching the Chillinois podcast, what the fuck are you doing? You can go to chillinois.net/video to watch it on your preferred platform, or on YouTube, the WeedTube, and Patreon. So basically, if House Bill 3741 is passed, all edible cannabis that has been remediated, I said that weird, all edible cannabis that has been remediated, I said that weird again, with irradiation must be labeled. So if you're not familiar with irradiation, check out episode number 252 of our podcast. It's out right now. But this is House Bill 3741. Once again, if passed, it would require all edible cannabis that's been remediated with irradiation to be labeled. Very interested to hear what you think about this. This is an idea we've talked about on the show in the past. This is an interesting one because the proposal limits it to edible cannabis, which I don't understand why. That was the number one question we received. Why is it limited to edible cannabis? I couldn't honestly tell you, other than the fact that, maybe if this bill is backed by the industry at all, maybe the labeling requirement for flower is something that they wouldn't have accepted. I don't know. I just tend to, now that I've learned a little bit about what goes into drafting these bills and stuff, they kind of like, from what I understand, and look, I am not like an insider by any means. I literally smoke weed and just talk to people. I try to talk to people that I think are insiders. Whether or not they are is an open question. But from what I can gather, when people work on these bills, they try to be quote unquote realistic, and they try to keep possible feedback they might get in mind. And so I feel like I'm honestly shooting at the hip with this. I feel like edible cannabis was the only thing that they were okay with labeling in that fashion. It's the only thing that was digestible, pun intended. I guess just as a last guess, this is something I said on social media, and I think I've said on the show a few times. From what I understand, a lot of the edibles in Illinois are made with remediated cannabis because you can do that. The law allows for any sample that has failed, it can be remediated and turned into an oil. And I believe that oil, if it passes testing, now that's the thing, is that it can be turned into an oil and it can be remediated, is what I meant to say. I think I said remediated into an oil. It can be remediated and then turned into an oil. If that oil passes the test, then it can be used in edible cannabis. I don't think it can be used as I don't think you can sell it as dabs, but I might be wrong on that. I'm pretty confident that I am wrong on that. If you're reading the language that I'm displaying right now, you can see that it says, if the sample failed any other test, the batch may be used to make a CO2 or solvent-based extract. After processing, the CO2 or solvent-based extract must still pass all required tests. So I just wanted to say that I don't think this oil only has to be used for edibles. It can also be sold as just regular oil. So with that in mind, like I say, from what I hear, most of the edibles in Illinois are made with remediated cannabis, because it's like, if I can't sell it as flour, I'm not just going to throw it into the fucking trash can. I'm going to remediate it and turn it into a chocolate bar, and you don't know the difference, right? So I think that maybe that, I don't know. Maybe that's why, because it's kind of already acknowledged that is possible and that is okay if the final sample still passes all tests. So maybe they're like, well, given that, we're fine with labeling it. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. If you have any thoughts on what the answer might be, once again, you can call us or text us at 312-772-6844. You can leave us a voicemail. Just a final thought before we leave, since we're talking about new legislation, it's something we've shared a little bit about, and we've tried to share as much as we can, as much information as we can. New bills have been filed. Here we're displaying some bills that at least have come across my desk. So House Bill 1, which is the Cure Act, it's something we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about. We'll be having somebody on the show pretty soon to talk about that some more, so that we can get the answers that we need to determine whether or not we support the bill. If you're watching the video right now, you can see the rest of the bills that at least I've seen. So I'm just going to read it for our listening audience. House Bill 8, House Bill 25, House Bill 30, 31, 32, 998, 1010, 1025, 1035, and 1055. Now, what exactly all these bills do is your job as an informed citizen to figure out. I'll try to do my best, of course, to share information on it. And in fact, one of these bills that's been introduced, I believe it's either House Bill 1205 or 1206. I can't remember right now. I think it's House Bill 1206. Yes. We talked to the person that helped to draft that bill, and that person is actually Evan Bruno, who was featured on the recent episode that I mentioned at the top of this episode. So it's episode 253, I believe, and it's available on patreon.com/Chillinois. Yeah, that's episode 253, featuring Evan Bruno, and he talks a little bit about that bill. I think that bill is worthy of our support, if I might say so myself, after having talked to him about it. And it's a topic Evan and I have talked about for years at this point. So it's really reassuring to see him to craft language and have it submitted as a bill. It's something that we started talking about, I think, just around the time that the pandemic started, or maybe it was when, the vaccines first came out. He was talking about the issue that is the fact. He's talking about an issue that exists right now. Sorry, folks, I am really high. And that is the fact that the law says cannabis must be in an odor-proof container. And if it's not, some law enforcement have been using that as an excuse to charge you with a crime, because technically speaking, it does read as a crime in the vehicle code. So if an officer is able to claim that they smell cannabis and you do in fact have cannabis on you, then that means the container is not odor-proof, and they will actually charge you with a crime on the spot. But they can use that crime, this is the scary part, to gain entry to your vehicle and then charge you with other crimes, right? Because that's what cops love to do, is just charge you up, get you all repped out. So check out that episode. It's episode number 253. It's on patreon.com/Chillinois. I hope you found value in this quick episode of the Chillinois podcast. I just want to remind you all that we're taking callers. The number is 312-772-6844. You can send us a text. You can leave us a voicemail. We could play that voicemail on the show, or if you'd prefer that you keep yourself anonymous, you can report possible corruption, fraud, criminal activity, conflicts of interest, or abuse in the legal cannabis industry in Illinois by calling that number one last time. It's 312-772-6844. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode, which one of the next few episodes is going to include a new licensee in the Illinois cannabis industry. This person has, I think, won licenses in all of the new categories. So that includes craft cultivation, retail, infuser, and transport. Might be a little bit wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm dead on that they have won a license in all of the categories. So you will be seeing them and their products in the future. So stay tuned for that episode. We always like to include the perspective of industry insiders or people that are in the industry themselves. So if that's a perspective you'd like to hear more about, stay tuned. And once again, I hope you found value in this episode of the Chillinois podcast.